Oh my! Thank you all so much. Thank you so much, my fellow students, for putting us all in this position. Thank you so much to Dean Schwartz. So actually, before we begin, I wanted to say you all heard at the top that the Humphrey School is now in the top 10 according to U.S. News and World Report, which is very, very exciting. And we're number 8. We're tied for number 8 with 3 other schools right now. And when I heard this, I wanted to try and take us up to the top. And so I looked at what our current political leaders are doing in order to try and rise in the polls and overtake their competitors. And I looked to basically what Donald Trump does. And this is entirely true. You can ask Chelsea. I wrote a speech for Dean Schwartz talking about our competitor schools in the style of Donald Trump tweets, and for some reason, he never read it. So I was going to read just a couple of them, because this is being recorded. So here we go. So low-energy Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy isn't moving in the polls. Sad. Weak Princeton is bad at math. The good news is nobody cares, especially me. Who should star in a reboot of Liar Liar? Ted Cruz, Hillary Clinton, or the Pierce School of Public Policy? Make public policy great again. Thank you. I don't know why. We want to be number 1. I think that it's fair to ask sort of how we got here. I mean, just last week I was on a public access political program in Bloomington, because that's how big of a deal I am. And there was, I was on a panel with a longtime political leader, and he actually at one point did the advance work for our school's namesake, Hubert Humphrey. And he asked me, knowing that I was going to be graduating in about a week, do you think that Donald Trump represents a post-policy world? I said, oh God, I hope not. I just spent 2 years immersed in data sets and policy memos in 12-point type with 1-inch margins. I really hope that that's not true. But it's fair to ask how we got to that point, how we got to a place where people think that their choice is more or less between compromising with a system that they think is inherently flawed or voting for somebody that promises to blow the entire thing up. Why national trust in institutions is at an all-time low. Why the most popular genre of children's literature is post-apocalyptic dystopian fantasy with werewolves. I have a theory as to why this is true, and this is somewhat simplified, but I think that for a long time, we, us, policy folks, thought that that our job was to go to a small room downtown with no windows and brew a pot of coffee and figure out how to solve some big problem, and we would produce one of these white papers, and we would give it, and that would be the answer, and we would hand it over. And I think that actually probably worked for a time, that there was a time when there were problems and issues that required just a really smart group of people thinking really hard about it. But I think that same model, even when it worked, and more so when it didn't work, probably bred some distrust. I think that it probably left a lot of people thinking that there's some disconnect between them and us, and that we're not the same and we're not connected. And I disagree with that. I think that we are. And I recognize that that's an oversimplification, but I think that distrust exists for better or for worse. And I think that compounds the fact that the problems that we're going to go out, and that's us, are going to go out and have to deal with, are really wicked hard. I think that you're thinking about something like an achievement gap or climate change or economic inequality. These aren't things that just a few smart people downtown can try and figure out on their own. It's something that requires people from a long list of backgrounds and a variety of disciplines and people with all different talents and understandings coming together and thinking about how do we figure this out cohesively, collaboratively, creatively. How do we do that? I will say my bias is that I sincerely believe that the world is understood through stories. I think that the way that people make sense of things is by telling themselves or telling others stories. And I'm not trying to discount expert analysis or data. I think all of those things are really important to telling those stories. But if you can't put it into some sort of narrative, I don't know if it ever connects for the broad swath of people. And worse, there's a good chance somebody else is going to come around and tell the story for you, which we probably don't want. So I have been thinking about this and thinking about how do I try and express this, and how do I try and get across the idea that stories are so important to the work that we're doing as policy analysists and analysists or implementers or makers. And this being the Humphrey School, I decided ultimately, well, first of all, I want to show, not tell you all why it's important to be good storytellers, but this being the Humphrey School, it's not fair for me to have to just do this all by myself. There should be a team element to this. And so, I'm going to ask if Dr. Bloomberg and Dean Schwartz would actually join me to do an improv game on stage. Yeah, okay. Okay, so yeah, no, you should come up here. So we have to stand in front of the teleprompter so they know that we're not cheating, that we're not scripting this. So, well, yeah, why doesn't he? I mean, it's almost worth getting a doctorate just for the hat. Now, okay, before we start, I think that we should set some group norms. I think I'm going to just assume best intentions. I have a list of goals that I have suggested, but if you want to add to the Google Doc later, that's fine. Okay, so what we're going to do, this is an actual improv exercise that I do. This is a one-word story, and we need to, it's going to be okay. This will be fine. We're going to do a kind of commencement words of wisdom that we're going to pass on to you, but we can each only speak one word at a time, all right? So it'd be like once upon a time, and we'll just go like that, and here we go. Okay, so once.
In.
1,000.
Years.
You.
Will.
Find.
Bananas.
In.
Many.
Of.
Are.
Public.
Utilities.
Commissions.
And.
I.
Am.
Embarrassed.
Also.
Because.
I.
Don't.
Know.
How.
To.
Get.
This.
Done.
All right, can we do a big round of applause? Smart forward movement. So good. That's good. That's good. That's good. Could you tell that we didn't practice that? That was real. So, I love that game. That is an honest-to-God improv game that I play with my cast, and I love it not just because it's fun and silly, but because that game to me mirrors what I think we should think about when we think about what is our role in telling a story or being part of the world or being good leaders. I think that there was a model once upon a time. I think that there was an image, and probably some people still buy into this, that a leader is somebody who marches off into battle, and then there's a whole group of people that follow up behind him or her and follow their orders. But that to me feels old or feels not complete. To me, the kind of leadership that I would want to exemplify and I'd want to see in all of us is something closer to that. It's something closer to a group of people being able to come together and tell a story that is bigger than any one of us could have come up with on our own, involving bananas. I think that is what's amazing about that, right? Is that what we just did there was we said something that, you know, if we had handed the microphone to any one of us, no one of us would have said that thing together. Probably. And it required all of us. So it required each of us to sort of know where we fit in that particular moment and where we fit in that larger story. If any one of us, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, if Dean Schwartz had, you know, just decided, oh, I'm going to make this story do what I want it to do, which is talk about advancing the common good, because this is a solemn occasion where we should take things seriously. And he had forced that in. It very well could have derailed the entire story, right? It could have made it so that those words didn't fit together at that particular moment. On the flip side, you know, it might be that one of us was getting bored with always saying the or and, but over and over. But if we didn't say that word, then the sentence wouldn't make sense. And I think that that's a really hard thing to know in the world, is how do I fit into this thing, and how am I helping make it bigger and better than it would be if I weren't here. I think that is how I hope we walk out into the world, and we walk out thinking about not, it's my job to go and fix everything myself, or it's my job to provide the data and analysis or thoughtful commentary so that somebody else can fix everything. But how do we fit into a larger story? How do we make something that we're working with, or the team that we're a part of, or the community that we exist in, or the world that we want to serve better because we're in it each and every moment? There's a Spanish poet, Antonio Machado, who wrote, "We have no road, we make the road by walking." And I love that, because all of us today will walk out of here, and some of us will be walking to jobs that we have, some of us will be walking to monster.com, but there's not a particular road, and I think what we need to do is make that road as we go. We need to think about, how do we fit into a big story that we're trying to tell? And how do we make sure that that story is something that is positive and inspiring, and something that we're proud to be a part of, and that brings other people into it and makes the story deeper and richer and more fun than it would have been if any one of us had been left out of it for even a minute. So with that, I will say thank you, and particularly thank you to Dean Schwartz and Dr. Bloomberg. Thank you so much to my fellow graduates. Have a good afternoon.